That is one big pile of shit. This could be it. We may be in some multiverse where I don't even exist.
Don't knock rationalization. Where would we be without it?
Yes, without the use. To take them out, take them down, do your stuff. Life finds a way.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of The Complete Works, a deep dive into the career and films of actor Jeff Goldblum. My name is Mike Smith, and joining me on this journey into the wondrous world of Goldblum is my friend, co-host, and fellow Goldblum maniac,
Mike DeCriscio.
How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. I'm great. It's another exciting day to be talking about the magnificent Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, indeed. And I feel like this is an episode where we should be talking over each other the entire time. That's my that's my bad Robert Altman joke, and we're going to move on. Your silence spoke volumes there, Mike.
I was trying the anti-Altman, and we'll see how it works.
So on our last episode, we talked about Jeff Goldblum's role in Robert Altman's California Split. It was a small role. He's only in it for one scene and has maybe 3 lines before he leaves, and you never hear from him again. And there, we told the story of how Altman came to cast Goldblum. He saw Goldblum performing in a play called El Grande de Coca-Cola. Still a great title for a play. Just want to throw that out there. Altman loved him in the play, knew he wanted to work with him, and he cast him in California Split. But that seems like a fairly grand story for a pretty small role, you know?
Yeah.
But that story doesn't really take into account the way that Altman worked with actors, because if he liked you, there was a pretty good chance you'd be working with him again. And in fact, when Jeff Goldblum went to go film California Split, Robert Altman told him, like, hey, by the way, we're also filming this movie this summer in Nashville, if you want to go check that out. And he kind of came right on. So that was the case with Goldblum. Actually, Goldblum appeared in a total of 4 Robert Altman movies over the course of his career, including Altman's follow-up to California Split, which is the movie we're going to talk about today. Here's the trade-off. This is a bigger role than Goldblum had in California Split, but he has no dialogue in this movie. Which, Goldblum especially is somebody you like to hear talk. He's somebody you hear talking a lot of the time. I was watching interviews of Goldblum before we recording this, and like the dude can just like talk for 10 minutes on end with like no stopping in sight. He's incredible at it. But no dialogue in this movie. His character is completely silent and sort of pops up sporadically throughout the film's 2-hour, 40-minute runtime. He's another eccentric face in the vast ensemble that is Altman's 1975 magnum opus, Nashville.
Robert Altman's Nashville is 5 days in the lives of 24 unforgettable people. That's a lot of characters, so listen closely. Lily Tomlin is a gospel singer who strays just a bit when she has a one-night stand with Keith Carradine, a hot young rock singer. Ned Beatty is her husband, who doesn't suspect a thing.
Henry Gibson is the #1 country and western singer who's being tempted to run for governor. His sidekick, Barbara Baxley, drinks a bit and talks a lot. And his son, Dave Peel, is sort of attracted to Geraldine Chaplin, who plays a starstruck reporter from BBC TV.
Ronnie Blakely is the adored singing star on the verge of a breakdown. Alan Garfield is the husband trying to save her life and her career. Scott Glenn is the quiet soldier who worships her from afar. Karen Black is the rival singer who dresses like a sweet little prom queen. But don't let that fool you.
Michael Murphy is the campaign manager who'll promise anything, especially to Gwen Wells, a waitress who dreams of being in the spotlight and may have to do a lot of things she never dreamed of to get there. Robert Doakey is the one man who tries to tell her the truth.
Shelley Duvall is the wide-eyed groupie doing what all groupies do so well. Keenan Wynn is the uncle who doesn't understand this wild girl in the sequined hot pants. David Hayward is the sensitive young boy who answers the room for rent sign and who has a big surprise in store for everyone.
Christina Raines is the female singer in a trio who's married to one of them, Alan Nichols, but spends a lot of time with the other one. And David Arkin is the chauffeur who knows all the inside stories and is ready to tell them.
Timothy Brown is a black singer who's made it, but not everybody is happy about that. Jeff Goldblum is the cycle freak who's everywhere the action is. Barbara Harris is the would-be superstar who's running away from husband Burt Remsen, who's chasing her through the wilds of Nashville.
Nashville is about a lot of things and a lot of people. See all 24 of them and the outrageous things they do in Robert Altman's Nashville.
Robert Altman's Nashville,
For movie lovers.
the damnedest thing you ever saw.
Now, Nashville is a movie that got a lot of critical acclaim when it was released and is today widely regarded as an American masterpiece. It was selected for the National Film Registry in 1992. It placed number 59 on AFI's list of the 100 greatest American movies of all time. It still holds the record for the most Golden Globe nominations ever received by a single movie. Which
What?
is kind of cool. Yeah, 11 nominations. 4 of them in the same category for Best Supporting Actor, I think, or Best Supporting Actress. Somehow it lost that category, which is insane.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I guess they must have split the vote 4 ways. But anyway, record for most Golden Globe nominations for a movie. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for Robert Altman, 2 Best Supporting Actress nominations for Ronnie Blakely and Lily Tomlin, and Best Original Song for I'm Easy by Keith Carradine, which it won. That was the only Oscar that it won that year.
Wow.
Now, you had never seen Nashville, correct, Mike?
Correct. Yeah, I didn't really know much about it at all. It was recently drafted on a screen drafted episode on Ensemble Casts in the fall, I think it was, and this was number 1. So I knew about it through that and through their discussion on that podcast, but I had never seen it or really knew anything about it much.
Okay. Yeah, you can add that to the accolades that I just mentioned for Nashville also. It's number 1
correct.
in the Screen Drafts episode. Yeah, I had seen Nashville once before. I saw it about a year and a half ago when I was actually making my way through the AFI Top 100 list. Like, I had seen like 75, 76 movies on that list, and I realized it. So I was like, I can just work through the rest of this and, watch some good movies I have been on my bucket list for a while. So finally watched Nashville about a year and a half ago before we had decided to do a Jeff Goldblum podcast, and now I watched it again. So it'll be... I think watching it again actually helps the movie a lot, but I'll tell you more about that in a bit. Nashville is a slice-of-life comedy drama showcasing the lives of dozens of people living in the country music scene in Nashville in 1975. Joan Tewksbury, the writer, had floated the idea to Altman about making a movie set in Nashville a few years prior, and he sent her there in 1973 to observe the people and the culture. And her diary became the basis of the movie's screenplay, actually, with many real-life observations making into the movie, including stuff like the highway pileup. That's something that actually happened in real life that Joan Tewksbury observed and just kind of became a part of the movie. And like with most Altman projects, the script was more of a blueprint for the actors than an actual rule book. And they were able to improvise most of the dialogue that you hear throughout the movie, which I think you can tell when you're watching the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Altman's casting of the movie was fairly unconventional. Rather than have a traditional audition process, he based decisions on meeting with individual actors, and basically, if he liked you, you were in. That's kind of how it worked for Nashville. And Nashville has a ton of people who had already been in Robert Altman movies in the past, like Keith Carradine, Shelley Duvall, David Arkin, Burt Remsen, Timothy Brown, Gwen Wells, and of course, Mr. Jeff Goldblum. They filmed on location in Nashville throughout the summer of 1974, and most of the extras you see in the movie were Nashville locals, many of whom were not there for the film, but instead just happened to be where the cast and crew were filming at the time, and they got caught in the movie. They're in there now, which is pretty wild. That feels like something that wouldn't fly today. That's not something that like a studio would allow, I think.
No, not a chance.
In terms of just like legal disclosures and like all these different like legal rights and stuff, it just wouldn't happen in a modern day studio. So that's pretty wild that it's the actual residents of Nashville you're seeing anytime there's like a huge crowd in this movie.
That's awesome.
So the movie features a huge ensemble cast that includes Jeff Goldblum as Tricycle Man, a silent figure who rides around on a giant motorcycle while wearing a big cowboy hat, sunglasses, and a leather jacket with a snake on it. He is my favorite character in the movie.
Interesting. The person that doesn't talk in the 2 hours and 40 minutes.
I mean, I'm being a little overdramatic when I say that, but I just really love Jeff Goldblum in this role. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to try to run down most of the movie's cast as quickly as possible because there's so many of them. I believe in you. You can do it. Okay, thank you. Any interruption will derail this entire thing, and I'll have to start over, Mike. You don't want that. Ned Beatty plays Del Reese, the lawyer for country singer Haven Hamilton, who's played by Henry Gibson, who is the bad guy in The Burbs. He's also the Illinois Nazi in the Blues Brothers. He's the leader of the... That's who he was. Okay. I knew that was the one that you would recognize, so there you go. Yep. Karen Black from films like Airport 1975 and House of a Thousand Corpses plays Connie White, the country music rival to Barbara Jean. She was like the villain of House of a Thousand Corpses, I believe, in that movie. And so Barbara Jean is the superstar who much of the film centers around. She's played by Ronnie Blakely, who was nominated for an Oscar for performance. She's also in movies like The Driver and Nightmare on Elm Street. Former football player Timothy Brown, who also appeared in Altman's MASH, plays Tommy Brown, the African-American singer who performs at the Grand Ole Opry. Keith Carradine, who appeared in Altman movies McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Thieves Like Us, and who also played Wild Bill Hickok in Deadwood. He plays Tom. Christina Rains from The Sentinel. I mixed up things already. Hold me.
Oh boy.
Here we go. Okay, no. Keith Carradine plays Tom Frank. I skipped a line in my thing, and now it's complete chaos, Mike. Here we go. Tom Frank is part of a folk trio who's also comprised of Alan F. Nichols from Slapshot and Christina Rains from The Sentinel. Geraldine Chaplin, daughter of Charlie Chaplin, plays Opal, the British reporter. Robert Duquois, who appeared in all of the RoboCop movies, plays Wade Dooley, the cook at the airport, who works with Suleen Gay, an aspiring singer, who's played by Gwen Wells, who was in California Split, which makes this a California Split reunion for her and Jeff Goldblum. Kind of cool. Shelley Duvall, who had been in a bunch of Altman movies and would go on to The Shining, of course. She plays Martha in the movie. Scott Glenn, seen in recent years in shows like The Leftovers as Kevin's dad and Daredevil as Stick. He plays Glenn Kelly, the soldier who wants to go see Barbara Jean throughout the movie. Barbara Harris from Family Plot and Peggy Sue Got Married, throwback to an older version of this podcast. She plays Winifred, another aspiring singer who keeps running away from her husband Star, who's played by Burt Remsen, also in California Split, so there's another reunion there. Lily Tomlin, in her film debut, plays Lydia Reese, a gospel singer and mother to 2 deaf children. Thomas Hal Phillips, who also worked with Altman a bit in California Split, provides the voiceover for Hal Philip Walker, the presidential candidate. Merle Kilgore, the real-life co-writer of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire and manager for Hank Williams Jr., plays Trout, a bartender. The film's music supervisor, Richard Baskin, appears throughout the movie as Frog, who is mostly silent, but he's awesome whenever he's on screen. He's great. Altman has a voice cameo himself as producer Bob at the beginning. And there are a couple of celebrities appearing as themselves throughout this movie, including Howard K. Smith, Vassar Clements, Julie Christie, and in one last California Split reunion, Elliot Gould appears in this movie too. Supposedly the Elliot Gould and Julie Christie cameos happened because they just kind of happened to be passing through Nashville while Altman was filming, and he was like, hey, come on, let's make a movie. And I amazingly did that while not breathing, so I'm going to take a huge breath.
Nice. I'm proud of you, Mike. You know, you're showing off your radio chops. You really did it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So Nashville was written by Joan Tewksbury, who had also written Altman's Thieves Like Us the prior year and went on to be a TV director. And it was directed by Robert Altman during the most prolific period of his career, 1 year after California Split and 1 year before his next film, 1976's Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, which was a revisionist Western with an ensemble cast led by Paul Newman. Have never seen that movie? Sounds pretty good. The film had a budget of $2.2 million and made roughly about $10 million, that's according to Wikipedia, and was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. It was released on June 11th, 1975, and if you were not seeing that, you could have been seeing Night Moves, which was a neo-noir directed by Arthur Penn that starred Gene Hackman and featured Melanie Griffith and James Woods in early roles. And the IMDb plot for Nashville reads, over the course of a few hectic days, numerous interrelated people prepare for a political convention as secrets and lies are surfaced and revealed. Whew. Okay.
What a great IMDb plot.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all you can really say about Nashville, because this is as plotless a movie as it gets for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and I should say, I that whole list of people that I read down there, actors who were in the movie, I skipped a few names. Throw that out there. I purposely left some stuff out because I just couldn't do it, man.
It's too many.
But I hit all the major ones, I think, so that's the important thing. But okay, so Mike, you had never seen Nashville before. This is your very first time watching it. It has the reputation of being an American classic. What were your overall thoughts on Nashville?
Yeah, so I was kind of, I didn't really know what to expect exactly. I buckled up for a 2-hour and 40-minute American classic, quote unquote. And I mean, like, what does that really mean? What does that tell you when you don't know anything, right?
Right.
So I was kind of surprised that it just kind of wanders across, those 20 actors, those characters that you just listed. And like sometimes stuff happens and like most of the time it doesn't. And a lot of times there's a lot of talking. and there's a lot of singing, which is fun. That's kind of cool. I kind of just kept thinking of Prairie Home Companion the whole time, where it's just like, yeah, we're just mostly improvising dialogue, and we're trying to get to like the bluegrass show, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, like it was okay. I mostly sort of enjoyed Nashville, and I definitely think this was one that is going to benefit from multiple viewings. Because for most of the runtime, I just didn't really care about anybody per se. Like, we kind of jump around between all these different little small groups, and their characters overlap, and that was fun. But I felt like I didn't really spend enough time, which is wild for a 2 hour and 40-minute movie, with any one character long enough to be like, okay, this is the person I really am invested in. What happens to them? And as soon as something would be like a little bit, be like, okay, kind of dig this. Oh, okay, we're gonna go to other people now. It doesn't. Okay, cool. We would just sort of abandon it and come back to it later. But where the movie kind of goes at the end, I was kind of like, I think retroactively there's a main character. So I feel like if I watch it again with that knowledge, kind of paying attention to where that plot line begins, more so, I might enjoy this a lot more. And like, it's not bad. Like I said, it's just a lot it was a big ask. I mentioned to you before we started recording that there's a moment where like, okay, we're at the Grand Ole Opry. Like we've been talking about, are you going? Who's going to be there? Are we going to make it? Like all this stuff about getting to the Grand Ole Opry performance.
Right. And
I was like, okay, here we are. This has got to be the end of the movie. And I paused it. I was like, I need to get some water, go to the bathroom. Oh, there's an hour and 40 minutes left. Awesome. So after that, I was kind of like, all right, let's go. You got to pick up some stuff. You got to pick up the pace. It's incredible. Like, the performances are all great. The Altman doing the 8-track soundtrack thing.
Yep.
At times feels like he's just deliberately trolling the audience, which I'm sure we'll get into some of them, particularly the first one, when Barbara Jean arrives at the airport and there's just a full volume jet engine takeoff over her walking towards the airport. And I was like, all right, Altman's just making fun of us now. But yeah, I mean, like, it's fine. It was okay. And I definitely, it says something that I want to watch it again with, go back and give it a second viewing. So I didn't dislike it. I just wasn't particularly engaged enough to appreciate the 2 hours and 40 minutes, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up a Prairie Home Companion. I know you're not as familiar with Altman's filmography as some people are. Did you realize that was an Altman movie?
I did not know that was an Altman movie. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's actually.
I thought that was what's his name? Never mind, forget it. I can't remember. Christopher Guest?
No, I think you might be thinking of something else. I think A Prairie Home Companion was 2006, and that was Robert Altman's last movie before he died.
That's incredible. I feel like he's making fun of himself then.
Yeah. I've actually not seen A Prairie Home Companion, so I can't attest to that. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you brought that up. That's like, I knew, I figured you might not know that I was in a Robert Altman movie.
That's incredible. No, yeah, I had no idea.
But yeah, so I first saw Nashville a little over a year ago. Again, I was making my way through the remaining films in the AFI Top 100 that I hadn't seen. Proud to say I've made my way through all of them except one. There's one movie on that list I'm saving until I can watch it in a theater at some point, which is Lawrence of Arabia. One of these days, going to watch it.
Yep.
I'm very excited. I think there's one time I almost had the chance to watch Lawrence of Arabia in a theater, but it was like the night before my brother left for college, and I was like, man, come on.
Go to college the next day.
That's what I'm saying. Let me go see Lawrence of Arabia at the Alamo Drafthouse. Come on, man. But yeah, so I watched Nashville a while back, and I kind of had a similar reaction to what you had this first time when you were watching it, Mike. I feel like my thought was that it was pretty good. Not something I was really in love with, but it was also one that I could recognize and appreciate a lot of the stuff about it. As time kind of went on, I felt like I liked it more and more. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, okay, I really do feel like there is something here. And this time around, this is my second time watching it, and I liked it a lot more. I can tell you that. Yeah. I really, really like this movie. I think it's a movie that rewards revisiting it, partially because it takes a little time to kind of vibe with it, and partially because there's a million characters in this movie.
At least a million characters.
At least a million characters, and it's kind of hard to keep them all straight, I think. Because a lot of them are just like there's 3 or 4 aspiring country singers, right? And there's several people with like similar goals. And, it is from actors from the 70s, and like a lot of them are like pretty big name actors like Jeff Goldblum or like Shelley Duvall or, people like that, or Ned Beatty or Lily Tomlin. Mm-hmm. But like some of them are like people who I'm not as familiar with, and so you get mixed up a lot of the time, I feel like
You're just
watching this
another Southern white person, and that's all they are.
But I think this time around, I responded a lot more to its like slice of life tone. That just feels like it's kind of just ambling along. It's kind of like you're hanging out with these characters until suddenly it all clicks together at the very end. I still prefer California Split, which is a movie that I really just like connected to right away and I loved. But I appreciate the ways that Altman makes this movie feel both very epic and very intimate at the same time. It is like it is 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's like an epic story that's being told. But at the same time, most of it is just people hanging around.
Yeah.
Just chilling at concerts or chilling at barbecues or whatever. And that's kind of the movie. But it's using the backdrop of Nashville to discuss the idea of celebrity and the emptiness of pursuing it, while also attempting to reflect the political climate of the 70s. There's multiple references to the Kennedys, especially at the very end where it becomes very overt. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I will say I do prefer the first half of the movie to the second. Like basically everything up through the Grand Ole Opry. I'm like, man, it feels like almost like a Dazed and Confused style thing. Where I'm just enjoying hanging out with these characters.
That's why I really thought that was the end of the movie. I was like, okay, we've had a whole arc. We've made it to the Grand Ole Opry performance. Oh, there's more.
Yes. But then the second half of the movie. It's a lot more performances. I feel like the second half is like loaded with most of the performances of the movie, and there's a lot more actual plot and drama. And as somebody who is like, I like some of the music in this movie, but I'm also not the biggest country music guy. It's like, okay, these performances are, it's interesting to watch, but I'm not like, loving these songs like 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And so that first half of the movie just resonates more for me because I'm able to be like, hey, I'm hanging out and it's like a barbecue and hey, Elliot Gould is here. What up, Elliot Gould? And all
as
that
himself.
Stuff. As himself, which was pretty great. I know you're a big Elliot Gould fan just from like California Split and Long Goodbye and stuff. So were you excited when Elliot Gould showed up at that barbecue scene?
Yeah. I had no idea he was in this movie, and I was like, "Wow, man, this is gonna be awesome! Like, is he gonna be playing like some weird sleazy dude again? Like that's kind of his MO." And then one of the characters in the movie is like, "Oh, did you hear? Superstar Elliot Gould is here," and I was like, "What the fuck?"
And I like to just imagine a time where like Elliot Gould was a superstar, like I don't doubt that he was like a relatively famous person in the 70s. He was pretty well known. He was in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, and he was in Long Goodbye, and he was in like these movies, and he hosted SNL a couple of times, or I think a bunch of times actually, and stuff like that. So he was known. Right, like he was a well-known person, but it's not like I feel like somebody like Elliot Gould wouldn't be like a superstar today. It just
I don't think so.
He's not like he's like the Chris Evans of his day. It's Elliot Gould.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it is really fun to see him pop up in this movie during that barbecue sequence, and again, it kind of just reflects the making of the movie. I feel like the movie feels like the way it was made, where it just feels like, hey, let's just throw whatever is around. Let's hang out in Nashville for a couple of months. Film whatever we film, and then we'll kind of compile that into a movie, and then that's the movie. And I kind of love that about it. Like it has this like really just kind of laid back tone up until the very end, where you really like understand what Altman is going for. But of course, one of these figures throughout Nashville, Mike, is Jeff Goldblum, and that's why we're talking about it on this podcast today. So Jeff Goldblum as Tricycle Man. What did you think of Jeff Goldblum in this movie, Mike?
I mean, he's great. He's this kind of weird connective tissue. I feel like the real connective tissue is the campaign van for Hal Phillip Walker. That's like just spouting his speeches all the time.
Right.
That we kind of like travel with that, but he like rides, he follows it. He like in his tricycle or his motorcycle, follows that van a lot. But yeah, he just looks so weird with these big sunglasses and this big cowboy hat and the leather jacket with the tassels and stuff.
Yep.
And his introduction at the diner or whatever, when he just like pours half the thing of salt, half the salt shaker into his hand, does some little magic trick, and then drops it with the other hand. I was like, holy shit, it's Freak number 1. He's back. Freak, baby. He's a weird dude. He's playing another weird guy.
Yes. Yeah, he is definitely. I feel like despite having zero dialogue, I think this can be described as like the first quote unquote Jeff Goldblum performance.
Oh yeah.
Like compared to like Death Wish, where he really isn't like playing into the persona that he actually has in most of his movies, or like California Split, where he's only in about like a second of it.
Right.
This movie, he actually has like a little bit more of a substantial role, like not super huge by any means, but he has some screen time, and like whenever he is on screen, he's bringing like this weird kind of energy to the role, like sort of like he's high on something, but like he's maybe just eccentric, like you don't actually know anything about Tricycle Man. You don't
Right.
you don't really delve into the world of Tricycle Man other than the fact that he is on a giant motorcycle and he can do magic tricks, and that's like basically all you know about him. And that maybe he kind of has a thing for Sulene Gay, Gwen Wells' character,
Right.
when they kind of hit it off. But yeah, and there's like a physicality he brings to those early scenes too, which I really love. Like the combination of like him and the outfit that he's wearing and the giant bike he rides around just makes for one of the more like memorable images of the film, I feel like, which is why I love Jeff Goldblum so much in this movie.
Yeah, there's this weird like sensuousness about his character all the time. With it, he's just like riding around with like babes on his tricycle, and like it's so strange. And he's just kind of like there, and he seems like this kind of just like leftover hippie guy, because it's the mid '70s by now. Like the summer of love is over and all that stuff, but he's just there, man. Like that's basically his character, and it's great. Much. I don't know, it's really cool.
Yeah, they rode into Nashville, and he's just kind of around. He's there, and then he kind of disappears from the movie for a long time too. Like he's there kind of a lot for that first half, where you kind of see him like riding around doing things, and then I feel like the second half of the movie, like right after the Grand Ole Opry scene, like you don't see him again until the very end of the movie. Unless I'm missing a scene in my mind, but I feel because like maybe I looked away from the screen and he showed up and he didn't say anything, so I couldn't tell. I'm pretty sure you don't see him at all in that second half until the very end of the movie.
Yeah, I can't remember any, unless it's like he's just riding behind or in front of the campaign van.
Right.
But that would be it, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you think this role fits into the roles that we've seen Jeff Goldblum play in other movies, Mike? In the first two movies that we've seen.
Well, I mean, it feels like California Split is going to be the weird outlier in these early roles, at least, where he like has a tie and jacket. In Nashville, he's just this weird dude, and it's like I said he's freak number one, even though he's not like a vile person like he was in Death Wish. But it feels like he's got that going on, where he's just this like weird outcast in society guy. So there's that connection, basically, of the two movies. It connects with Death Wish more than it does California Split. So
I think while he may have had dialogue in Death Wish and California Split, like he actually has lines, this is the first real role where people actually like kind of took notice of Jeff Goldblum, as an actor. He's a relative unknown at this point. That's just part of like this massive cast. He's actually included in the trailer. I kind of described the trailer to you. Like it played earlier in the episode, but you haven't watched it yet. But the trailer is literally like 2 minutes of like two announcer voices going back and forth, just detailing the cast of the movie and like who they're playing. And one of them is like, and Jeff Goldblum plays the cycle freak who's everywhere the action is, and that kind of thing.
Oh my god!
So like he's used in the advertising for the movie, and I think it's a smart way to just get your actors' names out there too. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, now we have like an idea of how vast the scope of this movie is because of just how many actors are in this thing. But then you're kind of giving a push to some of the unknown actors that are in the movie at the time, including young Jeff Goldblum. So that was
look at that.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to see that in the trailer. And I think it's interesting to note, we talked about this at the beginning of this episode, and we talked about this in the California Split thing, but Altman was kind of the one who discovered Jeff Goldblum while he was doing that play, La Grande de Coca-Cola or whatever it was. And he actually discovered him before he had filmed Death Wish. This was like 1973 that Altman saw him in that play. So Altman seeing him in that play is what got Goldblum's agent to start seeking movie roles, sent him on an audition to Death Wish. That was his very first audition as an actor for a movie anyway. And he got it, which was incredible. So he's kind of talked about how lucky he was to be just kind of like plucked from obscurity from Altman and like told like, hey, I'm going to put you in California Split, and if you want, come down to Nashville for a summer and we'll go film this movie. And then when he was doing that, he also got the Death Wish call and all that stuff. So it all kind of happened at the same time. And this movie is sort of like the fruits of that labor, I guess. It's like the movie where it's like, this is like what it was all building towards, I think.
And I went and showed up with a lot of other people and sang a little bit. There was some music in it, but mostly fooled around. It was a kind of funny show. I got the part. I got that part. And then Robert Altman saw me in that show and put me in a couple of movies, Nashville and next up, and California Split. The first movie, so I got movies before I ever auditioned for them because he saw me in that play. And then right around that time, the first movie audition, because an agent saw me and said, oh, we're going to send you up for some movie parts, little movie parts. First part he ever sent me up for was Death Wish in 1973. Never been up for a movie audition before. for a very brutal character. We did bad things to Charles Bronson's wife and daughter, and there were a lot of bad-looking guys in the Gulf and Western building in New York, and waiting to go into this room with Michael Winner, a British director who directed that movie. And I went in, we improvised, we pretended there were ladies there, and we did bad things to them. And I sat there for a while, and I think I left, and my agent that day said, well, you got the part. They want you in the movie. And then I did that movie. And then it kind of went like that, So those are my first couple of auditions. It was very lucky and but I was thrilled to act. I wanted to act in the worst way, and I'd stayed with Sandy Meisner for a year. I knew nothing. I was not very good, besides whatever flair I might have had, And so I did whatever I did, but I've had a lot to learn. Thank goodness I kept getting chances, and still am getting chances to try to get better, for heaven's sakes.
Like, I haven't seen the next few movies that we're going to review, but I'm guessing they're slightly larger roles than the first three movies that we had to review for this podcast, between Death Wish, California Split, and this one, Nashville. So I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. But so I feel like this is like, Death Wish and California Split are technically before Nashville, but this feels like the real start of Jeff Goldblum's career for me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that kind of like expanding presence for Goldblum. So I feel like Cage didn't have quite that much of a trajectory off the top of my head.
No, Cage was Cage starred in Best of Times, so he's the ensemble cast in that one TV pilot. And then he was an extra in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or a glorified extra.
Right.
Like, he was in the movie, but he doesn't have any lines or anything. He's in the background. And then he was immediately in a starring role in Valley Girl. That was his next thing.
Right.
And then from there, he's mostly doing supporting parts or character actor parts and occasional leading parts throughout the 80s. But Jeff Goldblum, it seems like there's a bit more of like a build in terms of now he's going to have a little bit more like supporting roles, and eventually those will build into leading roles and that kind of thing. So I think it's a different trajectory than what we've done before on this podcast. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
It will be cool indeed. So, Mike, what are the moments or scenes in Nashville that stood out to you?
Well, there's just so much, Mike. But for real though, because most of this movie is just like moments.
That's true.
In these characters' lives. I mean, I don't remember the exact order. I think it's Barbara Jean kind of arrives at the airport, and like I said, we just get trolled by Altman as the fucking jet engine takes off.
Yes.
Over her arrival, and then she passes out. And then they get in the convoy, like they leave the airport, and then there's just a giant pileup for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes on the highway, where we just go from car to car, basically, seeing what's going on. And, I'm hot, go buy me a popsicle from the ice cream truck that's in the pileup that's now selling ice cream, which is great. And like somebody's got beer they're passing out and stuff. And that whole thing was a lot of fun. Like as much as I was kind of just like, what is going on? It was a lot of fun just to see all these like kind of random characters, and every conversation is at the same volume and there's 20 of them going on. So that's fun.
Yeah, I love the vibe. Yeah, I love the vibe of that highway scene, especially because it is one of those things where like this could be like there's like a 7-car pileup on the highway or whatever, and like once it's clear that like nobody was like killed or anything, then everybody's just like, all right, now it's a party, and I feel like that's like that's like the entire vibe of Nashville, the city as it is portrayed in the 70s. Like that feels like it feels like a really well captured version of this city. Like I was not in Nashville in the 70s. I don't know what the city was like.
Yeah.
But like the way it's portrayed in this movie feels like a very realistic portrayal of what the city was like. Like if this kind of thing happened, and again, this was based on like actual events that happened when the writer Joan Tewksbury was there researching for the movie. The highway thing actually happened, like where people were just kind of hanging on the highway, cracking open beers and stuff. Like that seems awesome to me. I just love that vibe, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, not having any idea what is real from this movie, it definitely as Nashville as portrayed in this movie. Like, yeah, I totally believe that's what people would do. We got Goldblum on the tricycle, and we just got like that. Even the scene before that, when they're like, there's like 4 cars in a row at the airport, and they all like kind of back out in like synchronized, and then can't pull away in synchronized, and they all get jumbled up. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun, weird stuff, and there's this weird mishmash of like post hippie stuff, like the kind of like folk trio group thing with Keith Carradine and like all those guys. Like they're in a VW Bug with peace symbols on it, and then we have like the record label guys and their big Cadillacs and stuff. Yeah, it's just a pretty interesting crisscross of all these characters. But what else? What stood out to you, Mike? Post the pilot.
Yeah, well, just want to throw out there that I love the opening credits of this movie, which you did not realize that this was like actually the opening credits of the movie. You were talking to me about this off air. You thought it was like an actual like TV commercial that they like latched on to the beginning of the movie or whatever.
Yeah, well, because the version I watched was a Criterion version, and you never really know with a Criterion thing, so I didn't know if they like included this in the beginning of the movie or not. So yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, those are the actual opening credits of Nashville, and they're stylized like a TV commercial advertising the soundtrack for the movie you're watching. And they're like listing off like all the actors' names and stuff like that, and all that stuff. And I think it's really like funny and clever opening sequence that like just kind of throws you into the world of the movie really quick. And also, they were designed by Dan Perry, who made many of the most iconic title sequences in movies of all time, including one little known movie that never went anywhere that you maybe never heard of. It was called Star Wars.
Oh really?
Yeah, which arguably the most iconic title sequence of all time. Is the Star Wars title sequence.
Yeah.
And Dan Perry is the guy who designed that and also designed this one. So I think it's kind of cool.
Wow.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
And even that sort of feels like an Altman troll, because it's the announcer guys being like, featuring appearances by, and like listing all the characters while the sound, like the songs are just blaring at full volume, and he's listing names and they're singing songs. It's kind of like the section in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when it's like, okay, we've scrapped the opening credits and we're going to do them in a different style, and then it's like the crazy music with the flashing colors. That's basically what these opening credits are the whole time.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We should start with the Goldblum stuff, I think, before we get to other parts of the movie. So kind of go through his arc in the film. So his intro, we kind of talked about a little bit. Probably his most significant scene in the movie, actually, is his intro, in which he seems to be able to get loose the most, I guess. He arrives into the airport, sits down at the diner bar, starts throwing salt into the air, and like he's like following it with his hands, like he's like kind of like doing like a weird like. I don't even know how to describe it. Like I'm doing
like
it
jazz
with
hands, kind of.
Yeah, like a jazz hands kind of thing. I'm doing it with my hands right now, but obviously this is an audio medium and nobody can see that. But you can see it, and you can vouch for me that I'm like doing like he's like following it with his hands, like staring into the air. It's wild.
I can confirm.
Yes, and then he seems to hit it off with Sulene Gay, who kind of sees him, and the other guy in the airport diner is like, "What's this guy doing? He's throwing salt in the air." And she's like, "Oh hey," and she like kind of talks to him for a bit. She sings a song to him at the bar and that kind of thing. And then from there, he's involved in the big highway crash, and he's pretty much the first one to like get up and drive away once it's over. Like once his bike gets up, he's out of there. He's cut down. And then the next time you see Goldblum, he's at the club. He's sitting alone. And he's there to watch Sulene Gay sing. She's there performing. And he does like a little magic trick with his napkin when he's when he's there. He makes like a small like glass with like water or wine or something like appear. And Shelley Duvall's like watching him like, this is an odd person. But yeah, and those are kind of like the most significant scenes with Goldblum in the movie. From there, he drops off Opal, the British reporter, and like one other person off at the barbecue that Elliot Gould shows up at. And then he drives off. He does not stay at the barbecue. And then we later see him attending the show at the Grand Ole Opry, and then he's gone for most of the movie after that point. And then, the back half of Nashville, almost entirely Goldblum-less, but he does show up again at the end for the climactic show at the airport where someone shoots Barbara Jean on stage. And we're going to talk about that a lot in a little bit, I'm sure. But yeah, that's kind of like the entirety of Goldblum's arc throughout the movie. So I felt like, because this is a Jeff Goldblum podcast, wanted to lay it out there for people.
Yes.
But anyway, outside of all of that, I do really love that opening sequence where it's Haven, the guy played by the Illinois Nazi from Blues Brothers, Henry Gibson. It's like him doing his like very slow dirge of a patriotic song, and it's actually like not a bad song. I kind of like it. It's like it's a weird song. Like it feels like one that I wouldn't ever listen to in my actual life. But when I'm watching it in the movie, I'm like, and we must be doing something right for the last 200 years. Like I don't know. It's pretty good, I think. But then it like at least it is that first time you hear it. And then and then he like gets really mad at like Frog or whatever. He gets mad at whoever's in the studio and like he wants to do it again. And then it's like, okay, this song gets really boring once you hear it a second time. But then it's like juxtaposing it against this other song that the black choir is singing in the studio next door, doing this like huge gospel music thing, and they're having the time of their lives, and it's cutting back and forth between them just like singing and dancing and going nuts, and then this like slow dirge of a patriotic song that Hayden is singing. And I just think it's really funny the way it kind of cuts back and forth between those two.
Oh yeah, I loved it, and I love just the absolutely like racist, awful BBC reporter being the person that connects the two,
Right.
where she like he throws her out of the the patriotic song, so they go to the studio next door and find this like gospel choir, and she said, I forget exactly what she says, but like, do they behave like this in church kind of deal, as if like this is uncouth, and they're like just like having such a great time, and they're like belting out all their stuff, and then we cut back and he's like cursing. I don't think he's cursing at Frog, but he's like telling him off and do it like you play like a frog and all this stuff. And he makes him do it so many times.
Yeah.
And I hated that. I hated Opal so much.
Oh, really? I like Opal
I feel like I'm
I
supposed to hate her.
I actually thought Opal was very funny in the movie. I actually really enjoyed watching her. She's actually supposed to be like the she was the first one ever cast in the movie.
Oh wow.
Geraldine Chaplin is Opal, and that character is meant to be like sort of a placeholder character for the writer of the movie, whose name I'm blanking on for some reason, Joan Tewksbury,
Right.
who was the one who was sent down to Nashville to kind of observe the town and everything. She's meant to be like sort of a placeholder character for Joan Tewksbury. And that's why she's kind of like there and like trying to observe everything around town. And I think it's very funny that like throughout the movie, she's like searching so hard to find a story, and she's not finding one. And then she's not there when Barbara Jean gets shot, and she's like, "What happened? What's going on?" At the very end, like I thought that was very, very funny.
Yeah.
But also, I think one of the funniest moments in the movie actually is when she's like walking alone in like a giant like abandoned car lot or whatever,
Junkyard.
a junkyard, yeah. And she's like, "What would these cars say if they could speak?" or that kind of thing. And like, I think that stuff is very funny.
Yeah, the rust on their bodies, the color of dried blood. What would they tell me? And then like some guy walks out from around the corner, like, "Huh? Are you talking to me?" Like, this completely interrupts her. It's so good.
Yes, but yeah, and there is like a little bit of an underlying racism with that character. I remember there's a bit where she thinks she's talking to Tommy Brown, right, the African American guy who's supposed to play the Grand Ole Opry, but she's talking to like a white guy, I think, right, and because she just assumes that that's Tommy Brown,
Yes.
right? And then she's like, "Oh, why don't you talk to her? She's married to him." And it's like a black woman, and she's like, "Really?" Like that kind of thing. But yeah, so I thought that was like it's a weird like fish out of water, like out of her depth kind of scenario. But like she so clearly doesn't belong in Nashville, and that to me made it like to me that was very funny. And also her like hounding Elliot Gould at the barbecue was also pretty good too.
Yeah, let me clarify. I hated her character. I loved like what was going on with her.
Okay.
I just thought she was like the worst, but was hilarious because everyone was just roasting her the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty great. I think the character whose story I connect to the most actually is Sulene Gay, who's played by Gwen Wells in the movie, who's in California Split. And, she's like an aspiring country singer, despite the fact that she is not very good at singing. And everyone tells her this, and it's like very obvious in like her performances and stuff. I was like, "Oh, she's not great at this." And then there's the sequence where she's forced to strip for the promise of being able to perform before Barbara Jean, and it's heartbreaking. And but then her final scene where she like basically pushes that down beneath her emotions and like commits to being a singer, even though like her friend at the diner is telling her, like Wade is telling her like, "You're bad at this, you can't sing," and she's like, "Oh, you're just jealous," and that kind of thing, and like, "I'm gonna make it." And I think like the way that she has like no chance of making it and is clearly deluding herself like really hits, and like I think it's such a biting indictment of like the emptiness of celebrity and like the pursuit of it and like how hollow that is, I guess.
Yeah, and just the way that people are completely and utterly willing to totally exploit her passion or her delusion. That the guys that like, I forget exactly how it happens, but somebody calls somebody, he's like, "We need entertainment for this this thing," and he's the guy at the bar, I think, where she's bombing on stage the first time, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this pretty redhead for you," and she thinks it's a singing agreement to perform singing, and it's like this whole gross, weird, disgusting thing that happens. Yeah, I don't know. It's this movie like I feel like it starts like it has nothing going on, but there's some stuff happening here, especially by the end, where I was kind of like, okay, I think I just missed whatever I was supposed to see, or it's just buried under 25 conversations going on. I just missed what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it is, like, it's a movie that I feel like rewards repeated viewings. Because, again, I had sort of the same reaction as you the first time I watched it. I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. But I wasn't, like, loving it. And this time around, I'm like, okay, I really dig this. But yeah, so outside of Susan Gay, are there other characters that you, like, connected to that you really like, Mike?
Just what a hunk Scott Glenn is, or was. What a hunky dude.
Right. I'm guessing you're mostly familiar with him because of Leftovers and Daredevil, right? Like,
yeah. And what was that rock climbing movie?
Was he in
Vertical Limit?
Vertical Limit, yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the first movie I saw him in.
Okay.
As a child. But yeah, I mean, mostly I guess for the Leftovers most recently.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, and his like kind of tragic Vietnam vet is right. Is a vet. I don't really.
Yeah,
remember.
I think he's definitely a soldier. I think definitely a Vietnam vet probably, because that would have been the war. It's 1975. That would have still been going on, right?
Right.
In the 70s.
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he was like just recently discharged. He tells a story about how like, he was telling his like dying mother that the only thing he had to do in this world was go see Barbara Jean perform live and that kind of thing. Like it's the only thing he wants to do, and he goes to visit her in the hospital while she's asleep and all that stuff. So yeah, Scott Glenn kind of like on the periphery of this movie, but yeah, definitely a presence. And I feel like that moment at the end when Barbara Jean gets shot and he just kind of like walks away like sullenly is very like I think there's a lot to unpack there where he's like thinking like, is there something I could have prevented? Is this like I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, he tackles the shooter guy and like gets the gun away from him. But yeah, it's kind of this weird like he left the war. He's discharged from the army and comes back to this basically. Yeah. The kind of old man that runs the boarding house that he keeps intersecting with, where one of the other struggling country musicians is sleeping, where his wife dies and he's Shelley Duvall's uncle, and like this whole weird thing that's going on. That guy's so sad, especially after his wife dies.
Right. Yeah. That's it's a bummer. Shelley Duvall, man, she's really upsetting in this movie just because she upsets that guy. And it's very upsetting.
Yeah, it's sad times.
Yeah, definitely. And that's at that boarding house is where the guy who shoots Barbara Jean is staying throughout the movie.
Right.
Like he's the one, you see him throughout the movie. He's carrying a violin case. You never actually see what's in the violin case throughout the movie. At one point, Winifred's like walking with him, Barbara Harris's character, and she's like, "Oh, are you a musician or something?" And he's like, "Oh, something like that." And he like goes and hitchhikes into a car, and you see him in the boarding house, and he's like kind of fending off Shelley Duvall, and like he's talking to his mom on the phone, and then I think the next time you see him is at the show when he shoots Barbara Jean.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there any indication that he's going to do that before that happens? Because I don't know if I like zoned out or whatever, but all of a sudden he's blown people away, and I was real fucking confused when that started.
No, I don't think there's any outward indication that he's going to do that, other than the fact that he's carrying that violin case around everywhere. But I also think that's part of the point of that movie. I feel like the ending of this movie sort of feels similar to California Split in a way, because it's a movie that seems to be about one thing that ends in a kind of unexpected tragedy.
Right.
But in this one, Kenny Fraser's been carrying this violin case the entire movie. He finally opens it to reveal a gun, and then he shoots Barbara Jean on stage. I think this ending hits really hard now, more so than it did even in 1975, because because we've seen events like this happen in the real world at concerts and other big public exhibitions, and it's always it's a lot of times it's like dudes who don't really show off a lot of outward signs that they're about to do this kind of thing. And so I feel like the fact that you're watching him, you don't check in on him a lot throughout the movie. I think he has like 2 or 3 scenes, and then you see him at the end. But like he's there throughout, and he doesn't seem like a terrible person or like a guy who's going to shoot somebody. But he does, and and that very end of the movie when he shoots Barbara Jean, it's very very shocking, and it's crazy. And then suddenly earlier in the movie they kind of name drop the Kennedys, and somebody starts crying over her memory of the JFK assassination. And then when this happens, you have Haven, Henry Gibson's character, the Blues Brothers Illinois Nazi, kind of on stage shouting like, "This isn't Dallas," that kind of thing, and he's like connecting it to
did not I'm so fucking dumb.
Y'all take it easy now. This isn't Dallas, it's Nashville. Oh man, this is Nashville. You show them what we're made of. They can't do this to us here in Nashville. Okay, everybody, sing. Come on, somebody, sing. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. You sing.
You know, and he's like saying like this is Nashville. We got to show them that this isn't going to destroy us and that kind of thing. And like the fact that the show keeps going after that, or that Winifred sees this as her moment to perform and be noticed. You know, it takes what looks like an almost like uplifting patriotic ending. There's the big American flag and there's the chorus and everything, and it transforms it with this like cynical eye towards America. I find that ending like just really, really powerful. Your hands are still on your face in shock. This connects back to JFK.
I was so confused, but I was like, what a weirdly specific line to use. Like, it's like, what, yeah, get fucked, Dallas. Like, what a slam on Dallas. Yeah, and like that whole scene before, that whole scene when the woman is like breaking down about like her memory of campaigning for JFK and then campaigning for RFK and then for like what it means to be a Democrat in Tennessee in 1975 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, for that to be also at the final performance for Barbara Jean, like she finally does it, like 'cause she keeps passing out and like she's having this mental breakdown and her husband keeps being like, oh, you can do it, and like putting her back on stage.
Yeah.
And he's like, she's not going to be able to perform in front of this banner and like like he doesn't want her politicized. And then she does it and she like has a great performance and like succeeds finally at what she's been built up to do for the last 2 hours and 39 minutes.
Yeah.
And then she gets blown away and some fucking rando person takes the microphone and like uses her tragedy as an opportunity to get her fame, which is like, wow, talk about America, huh?
Yeah,
you know?
there it is. I think you just like distilled 2 hours and 40 minutes of Nashville into a 30-second monologue there, Mike. So that's great.
Yeah. In front of the banner for the replacement party, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, the guy who's trying to drain the swamp in Washington and get rid of all the get rid of all the lawyers and everything like that. Like he's trying to, be the person of the people and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a moment I actually wrote down that it's oddly prescient how Philip Walker's platform is in 1975 and what this van keeps shouting at us for the whole movie.
Yeah, 'cause it's exactly the same rhetoric you're hearing in modern, like on the news today. It's the same thing, which is pretty wild. So yeah, all that stuff is happening towards the end. That's really like the movie completely converges in like that one point, and like I feel like the movie comes together like you said, it's like ambling along for a lot of that time, and then that very like last few moments, it's like holy shit, I feel like I need to go rewatch this movie.
Yeah, it's like, was this secretly about Barbara Jean the entire time? Because I wasn't sure.
I mean, it is sort of secretly about Barbara Jean the entire time because a lot of the movie is about people wanting to go see Barbara Jean perform. Most of the characters are trying to go see Barbara Jean perform in these various locations. They wanted to see her at the Grand Ole Opry, but she couldn't make it, so Connie White replaced her. They're going to the airport to go see her just land. She's supposed to be like a country music superstar. That's like, and kind of dives into some of the celebrity worship thing that the movie's going for too. And a lot of the characters here are meant to be analogs for real life musicians. I mean, Barbara Jean is actually supposed to be Loretta Lynn.
Oh. Yeah,
Tommy Brown is based on Charlie Pride, and I think the most obvious one is the folk trio is very clearly supposed to be Peter, Paul, and Mary. One of them is actually named Mary, so there is that. But yeah, Barbara Jean is like arguably the main character of the movie. I mean, Ronnie Blakely was nominated for an Oscar for this movie, as was Lily Tomlin. Which Lily Tomlin, by the way, this was her very first movie.
That's crazy. She's so good in this. Yeah,
she's great in this movie, and she'd been in TV for a long time before this, but like this was her first film role, and immediately nominated for an Oscar, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so Ronnie Blakely as a Barbara Jean, I think she is terrific in this role, and it is one of those things where you're kind of watching her sort of mental breakdowns and like her fall and like sort of rise by the end of the movie. It almost feels like to compare it to a more modern movie, Black Swan, the ending of that movie. Where it's this pursuit of perfection and then immediately just like cut down as soon as you finally reached it, basically.
Yeah. Hashtag deep, Mike.
Fair enough.
I also want to... No, but I mean, you're right, though.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I also want to highlight the performance. Was it I've Got Time, or the song that won the
I'm Easy?
Academy Award?
The one that Keith Haring sings? Yeah.
Yeah. That scene... I mean, this movie... most of the music, like the original performances, were written and performed by the actors, which is crazy. That's insane that they all wrote these music songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that performance specifically, where he's singing this kind of like forlorn, like our love can never stand, or like it can't be allowed to happen thing. And there's 3 different women in the audience that think he's singing to them.
Yes.
Which is fascinating. I loved it. It was so
really
good.
It's really, really great. And yeah, that's the song that won Best Original Song at the Oscars. It actually became a hit on the radio like a year later when Keith Carradine like re-recorded it into like a shorter version.
That's awesome.
So there was that too. But yeah, Keith Carradine wrote that song, performed it. He also wrote "It Don't Worry Me," which is the song that Winifred sings at the end of the movie after Barbara Jean gets shot. And that song's been stuck in my head since I watched the movie. Actually, that's probably my favorite song in the movie, and the most haunting also because it happens at that moment.
But also, I think what the lyrics are like, you may see that I'm not free, but it don't worry me, or something like that. It's like, that's not like an uplifting thing, if that's what... It's this weird, I don't know, it's very strange.
Yeah, something along those lines, which, I mean, that could also be a commentary on the way Americans sometimes misunderstand art, in the way that, like, Republicans love Bruce Springsteen, even though he is...
I was just going to say, I was born in the USA, man.
Right, yeah, there's an anti-Vietnam protest song, it's all that stuff. But yeah, other highlights of the movies for me. I mean, I do really love Barbara Harris' Winifred, who is the one who's singing at the end of the movie, and it's kind of another aspiring country singer. She has a lot of very funny moments throughout. She's like running away from her husband every time he shows up, and that kind of thing. And she's great in Family Plot, which is Alfred Hitchcock's final movie, which is from 1976, so the year after this. Actually, she's like the lead of that movie with Bruce Dern, and it's great. If you haven't seen Family Plot, I think it is genuinely like. Not one of Hitchcock's best. I'm not going to say that because Hitchcock had like 15 all-time masterpieces, but but it's like a really great movie, and I think like a really like I feel like it gets the later period of Hitchcock's career. I think it's a lot of flack because it's like it's the post The Birds or whatever, or post Marnie. It's like it's just whatever's, and there's a couple of duds in there, but like there's some really good movies that Hitchcock was still making into like his last years, and I think he died the year after Family Plot came out, or the same year or something like that. It's a great final film. So just throwing that out there. Great movie. She's great in it. She's also great in this movie. And Henry Gibson, I think, is also really great in the movie too, as a Haven, the country guy. The 200 years guy. But I really enjoyed him, and I like that he seems like a decent-ish guy throughout the movie too. I feel like he has like genuine friendships like with Tommy Brown, the African American guy, and who's playing the Grand Ole Opry, and he's seems like. It's not that he seems like genuinely worried about Barbara Jean, but he's like somewhat concerned for her, I guess. And that kind of thing.
He's a stand-up dude,
and part of his arc in the movie is they're considering having him run for governor, essentially, or run for like office in some capacity. And so you have kind of that like an entertainment person kind of moving into politics, which was around the same time I think Ronald Reagan was governor of California at that time. So
that sounds right.
Arguably commenting on that as well. But yeah,
I like.
I
like the character quirk for him that he just drinks milk. That's like the only thing he drinks the whole movie.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
I did notice that. Yes, that's pretty good.
It's so good.
But other just kind of quick scenes that I want to throw out there. I mean, the Barbara Jean scene where she keeps telling run-on stories at the racetrack.
Yeah.
It's like funny for like a minute, and then it's like, oh, this is like really sad. It's like it walks that line. I think the whole movie like walks that line really, really well.
I think me and the boys are going to strike up another tune for you now. Let's go, boys. I think there's a storm. Seems like it's a brewing. That's what my granddaddy used to say all the time before he lost his hearing. Once he got deaf, he never talked much no more. Except sometimes he'd say, oh gosh, or oh darn it, or my word. My granny, she'd go around the house and clicking her teeth to the radio all day. Boy, was she a lot of fun, and cooked always my favorite roast beef. And she was a sweetheart. She raised chickens too. She, in fact, did you ever hear chickens sound? You know how chickens go? Here, chick, 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 chick. Here, chick, 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 chick. Anyway, I guess we better strike up this tune before it's too late. Okay, boys.
But yeah, that whole sequence where like everybody's excited to finally see Barbara Jean perform, and she's there, and she sings like 2 songs, and you watch those like 2 songs in their entirety, and then she's about to start the next one, and she's just like, this reminds me of a story. And she just starts talking and rambling, and like no one's actually sure what she's talking about. And then she's about to start, and then she just keeps going, and then she's like, and and eventually the audience just gets really upset and starts booing and all that stuff. But that whole sequence, I think, really helps illustrate like how deep in a bad place Barbara Jean is right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's Another Bruce Springsteen thing that he now you got that in my brain where he just always does that. But anyway, yeah, that whole like willing to exploit people even when they're not healthy. You know, her husband stops it and like gets her off stage, but he says like I got her out of a hospital bed to come here for this.
Yes,
like maybe you should have let her stay in the hospital. You know?
Yeah, maybe. And also wanted to give a quick shout out to the sound design of the movie, which we've mentioned already. Was like there's a lot of stuff where it's like a lot of different conversations overlapping each other, like it happens in all of Altman's movies, and there's a lot of that sequence with the jets just like zooming past and all that. But I really it really stood out to me in the racetrack scene.
Yeah.
When Winifred's trying to perform, but the sound is completely drowned out by the sound of the car zooming by.
I don't think I realized that was Winifred, and that scene makes so much more sense. Okay.
She's there and she's like getting upset because like nobody could actually hear her perform, but like she's just there on the stage, and Frog is there and he's jamming along. Anytime Frog's on screen, I'm like, bring Frog back. He's great.
Yeah. I want the Frog cut of Nashville.
Anytime Frog,
just follow Frog the whole night.
Anytime Frog's not on screen, all the other characters should be asking, "Where's Frog?"
And I love in that scene in the very beginning when he's like, "What Haven, is that his name?"
Yeah.
Is like, what's the piano player's name? And the guy tells him Frog, and he's like, well, I asked for Pig, and Pig should have been here. I thought he was gonna go off on the guy's name being Frog, but no, it's the wrong animal.
His name is just Frog, which I also really liked in that opening scene when Haven is storming out, and he tells Frog, "You're never gonna make it in Nashville," and then it's a hard cut to "Welcome to Nashville," at the airport. Just a really great visual joke. But yeah, otherwise, any other just random scenes you want to throw out there, Mike, before we start moving on to Letterboxd reviews?
No, I feel like we covered all the hits basically in this movie. Let's see what the people have to say.
And we should say, yes, we covered, I guess, the hits for us, but there are probably like 12 different subplots that we did not address at all.
100%
in this last hour that we've been talking. So if you haven't seen Nashville, I recommend watching it. I really enjoyed it, especially the second time around. And if you have seen Nashville but only once, watch it again. It's worth repeat viewings. But all right, let's move on to Letterboxd reviews. I only have a couple here. Here's a 5-star review from Will Sloan, which reads, "No modern movie would have the courage to make its audience sit still while actors sing this much mediocre country music until the audience actually starts to like it."
There's this weird trick that the movie plays where by the end I was kind of like, Barbara Jean, she can jam. You know?
There you go. It does have in parentheses, Keith Carradine songs are good. So there's that. Here's another 5-star review from Gabriel Guimaris, which reads, "If The Godfather is the definitive American film, then Nashville is the film about America. It might appear to be as rambling as Barbara Jean's onstage disruptive stories, but Altman's steady directing never lets things get meandering, and the music, I'm not a country fan myself, but it's endlessly entertaining. The American dream might just be an illusion, but there will always be people chasing it. Bonus points to a super young Jeff Goldblum's brief walk-on role."
Hey, look at that.
Bringing it back to the Goldblum. Here's another 5-star review from Tentin Quarantino.
Jesus Christ.
Which is a great username. "Nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture alongside Barry Lyndon, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Dog Day Afternoon, and fucking Jaws." So
Jesus.
So yes, movies actually were better back in the day. Which that's like an all-time Best Picture lineup right there. Those are 5 full 5-star classics. That's incredible.
That could be numbers 1 through 5 on the best American movies ever made.
Yeah. They very well could be. And by the way, just for reference, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I believe, is the winner of that Best Picture category. I believe it won. I would go with Jaws personally, but that's only because that's my favorite movie of all time, so whatever. And finally, here's a 4-star review, which reads, from Thule I Am King, which reads, "This is one of those films that really pulls you into its world. One of the best endings I've ever seen. The film also confirms my belief that Jeff Goldblum is an enigmatic agent of chaos that exists in a reality beyond our comprehension."
Wow.
Which, maybe that's true. You know what? Barbara Jean might not have gotten shot if Jeff Goldblum hadn't gone to the thing.
Yeah, you're right.
You never know. Because it seems like, Jeff Goldblum arrives at the airport, meets Sulene Gay, and her experience goes poorly. He leaves the airport and gets into a highway crash, and everybody's stuck there for hours. and then he drops off Opal at the barbecue, and she annoys everyone.
He ruins Elliot Gould's day.
He ruins Elliot Gould's day. And then he goes to the Grand Ole Opry, and Barbara Jean doesn't show up. She has to be replaced with Connie White. And then he shows up at the very end, and Barbara Jean gets shot. So maybe Jeff Goldblum is the one who's actually behind all this, Mike. Maybe that's...
Is he merely an observer, or is he causing everything? We'll never know.
Is he the Watcher from Marvel Comics? Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Who sometimes gets involved in the affairs of the characters, even though he's not supposed to? Who can say? But the important thing is, Jeff Goldblum is in Nashville, and it's a delightful early performance from him, but it is just one of like many, many, many very good performances in Nashville. And it's a movie that's very much worth checking out. It has earned its status as an American classic. So, Mike, I mean, you had like basically it's a pretty good movie coming into this discussion. Now that we've talked about it for an hour, where are you at? Like, did your opinion like rise at all?
I mean, yeah, mostly. I kind of expected that to happen, that you'd talk me into liking this movie, but I feel like because I was already like baseline positive,
Sure.
but I feel like I need to see it again to like fully embrace it as like a 5-star, like deserving to be on the top 100 list kind of thing.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I watched it for the second time, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's great. I still think California Split is better, but that's just me. I mean, I think that's a matter of personal preference. Like, Nashville is doing something very different than California Split, and it's definitely a much more ambitious movie in scope, for sure. But yeah, I really like both movies, and I'm happy that we got a double dose of Altman at the beginning of this podcast, and we'll be getting a couple more Altman movies throughout the course of our time here with Jeff Goldblum. But that's going to be it for this week's episode of The Complete Work. So, Mike, where can we find you online this week?
You can find me at MD Film Blog on Twitter and Letterboxd.
And you can find me at M Smith Film Blog on Twitter, Mike Smith Film on Letterboxd, and Radio Mike Sandwich on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Complete Works. I'm Mike Smith. That's Mike DeCriscio. Don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast app. And if you want to contact us, hit us up at jeffgoldblumcompleteworks@gmail.com. And you can find the rest of our podcast on Rapture Press alongside The Review Zoo, which is a podcast about comic books and movie news and all that nerdy stuff. And you can follow this podcast on Twitter, by the way, at GoldblumPod. So our theme song was created by Kyle Cullen. Our logo was designed by Jacob Honeycutt, or at Jacob Honey on Twitter. And on the next episode of Complete Works, we'll be talking Goldblum's role in 1976's Next Stop, Greenwich Village, which is a movie from director Paul Mazursky, who made Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which was kind of Elliot Gould's breakthrough role, and also happens to be the film debut of one Bill Murray.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's that. Also, a very young Christopher Walken popping up in this movie, too. So I'm eager to check this out. Next Stop, Greenwich Village is the name of it. Plus, keep an eye out for the next month we might go to the movies, where we're definitely talking The Invisible Man and possibly Pixar's Onward along with it, if we are able to kind of finagle that schedule-wise. But definitely The Invisible Man. I've seen it this past weekend, and Mike, I can tell you, it's real, real good.
Hell yeah.
All right. Okay, thanks so much for listening, guys, and remember to go for the Goldblum. Nailed it in one.
Hey, nailed it in one, baby.
Crushed it.
Goodbye, Mikey 2 takes. Hello, Mikey 1 takes.
I mean, now that you're applying the name Mikey 1 takes, you're going to have to keep on that for...
That's a lot of pressure. Never mind.